It's 2021 and the Milwaukee Bucks are one win away from an NBA championship. And the Phoenix Suns are in their way. Giannis would finish that game with a masterful performance, putting up 50 points with 5 blocks. And with that, he would take home the Finals MVP and the NBA championship. His performance would go down as one of the greatest in NBA Finals history. Fast forward 3 years, and I will explain why another championship is not in sight. The Bucks started off as one of the worst teams in the league, and I blame Doc Rivers. Let me explain why he is the one mistake the Bucks made that will cost them future NBA championships. Hi, my name is Rotimi. I love basketball. I love to talk basketball, and I hope one day you can share that same love for basketball as I. The season after the championship in 2021, the Bucks decided that they were going to run it back. Their season was full of success and they had finished third in the West with 51 wins. Individually, Chris Middleton and Giannis had remained all-stars. The Bucks' offense was top 5 in the league and they were the 4th best three-point shooting team in the league. Also, their defense was similar and hadn't strayed too far away from the season before. They were clearly in shape to repeat. Heading into the playoffs, they were the favorites to make the finals, and in the first round, they had the Chicago Bulls, and that series was over very quickly. They beat the Bulls 4-1, and they were on to the next round. But there was one problem. In Game 2, Chris Middleton went down with a left knee MCL sprain, and there were questions about whether or not he'll be able to return this playoffs. This is where the problems started to rise. In the next round, they needed Middleton, considering that they were playing the Boston Celtics, a team they had gone back and forth with in past playoff series. All eyes were on Giannis and Drew to pick up where Middleton left off. They would go game for game that series, starting with a win in Milwaukee for Game 1, and go blow for blow with the Celtics, finding themselves tied 3-3. In Game 7, it was an outstanding performance by Grant Williams that left the Bucks stunned.
Grant Williams, another three!
The Bucks shot horribly, and that series was all determined by how well they could shoot from the three-point line. Giannis put up a monster performance of 34, 15, and 7, but that simply wasn't enough to get it done. Health had simply become one of their future concerns, but behind the scenes, it was more than that. Many left that season knowing that the Bucks had a chance once Middleton was back. But he was nothing but mediocre in his return. He missed 49 games and started only 19 of the 33 that he played. To give you an idea of his drop-off as a scorer, this is what he averaged before he got injured, and this is what he averaged after he got injured. That being said though, they still finished first in the East with 58 wins. Bobby Portis and Drew Holiday had stepped up to supplement Middleton's absence. And entering the playoffs, the question on everyone's mind was, will they stay healthy? As many had predicted, health was their downfall. In the first round, they played the Miami Heat, and Giannis would not play in Game 3 due to ongoing back issues. They were down 2-1, and without their wrecking ball, the Bucks couldn't get it done and were knocked out 4-1 in that series. But a huge turning point was on the way. Behind the scenes, the front office blamed Mike Budenholzer and fired him. Following that, an NBA insider stated that Giannis was the reason for that. Because when you have Giannis and you are the clear favorites, you cannot afford to get outcoached in the first round, which is very true. And then the Bucks hired first-time NBA coach Adrian Griffin and became the talk of the offseason. But not because of that, but because of this.
Blockbuster deal that lands the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo, All-NBA guard Damian Lillard.
This was a blockbuster trade, and very quickly the Bucks became the favorite in the East again. Dame was a 7-time All-Star, and Giannis had never played with a point guard of his caliber. Fans like myself were salivating over the pick and rolls between Dame and Giannis, Dame's unlimited three-point range, and Dame in the clutch. He was their ticket to a championship. But there was one issue. Dame wasn't healthy. Before getting traded, the Blazers limited his activity to avoid injury, resulting in him being unprepared for training camp. This adversely affected his synergy with Giannis, and their defensive shortcomings were evident. They had tried to replace defense with offense in that trade, getting rid of Drew Holiday. Lillard's defensive weaknesses were exposed under Griffin's defensive scheme, which was originally designed with Holiday at the nexus. There were many issues with Griffin's new defensive tactics, and it led to holding player meetings and seeking advice from peers around the league, which we'll get to in a second. Despite the team's successful record of 13-13, the front office realized that the players didn't have their coach's back anymore, realized he was incompetent, and told him he had to go. But something wasn't right. With all the chaos going on and with plenty of time left in the season, Griffin could have figured it out. After all, they were on pace to win 50+ games again. But something was brewing in the background. The Bucks were on the clock looking for a new coach and settled with Doc Rivers. This would be the decision that would cost them future championships. They hired him to keep Giannis happy, but there was one problem. Doc Rivers is a terrible coach. Let's just look at his resume. He started in 2000 with the Orlando Magic, and despite improving their performance, they suffered multiple first-round exits in the playoffs. including a notable loss in 2003 where they blew a 3-1 lead. After being fired from there, he was hired by the Boston Celtics. In 2004, Rivers faced early playoff eliminations and underwhelming seasons, but his 2008 team, Super Team, would win the NBA championship. And when I say super team, his 2008 team was built up of the best shooter of all time at the time, the best two-way player in the league, a top 5 scorer at the time, and a savant at the point guard position. This team didn't need him to coach. They were already great, so they were always going to figure it out. But in the following years, they couldn't maintain their momentum, including in 2010 where they lost to the Lakers after holding a 3-2 lead in the finals. And Phil Jackson had this to say about the coach.
Anybody in the NBA, they know how to lose in the fourth quarter, all right?
The Celtics would face more setbacks. They lost to the Miami Heat in the playoffs in 2011 and again in 2012 where they blew another 3-2 lead. But this time that was due to LeBron's greatness. After leaving the Celtics, he joined the Los Angeles Clippers in 2013, where he saw playoff campaigns that were ruined due to critical failures, including in 2015, they had a second round loss to the Houston Rockets after blowing another 3-1 lead. At this point in time, he had become the only coach in NBA history to blow multiple 3-1 leads in the playoffs. But in the 2018-19 season, the Clippers managed to push the Golden State Warriors to 6 games in the first round, but they were ultimately eliminated. This was actually a huge success because many considered this to be a sweep, but they managed to at least pull off 2 wins. Right after that, in the offseason, he would acquire Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. This team was the favorites to win the NBA championship, but they lost in the conference semifinals, again blowing a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets. At this point, it should be evident that he was a guaranteed choker. He would soon be fired, but then hired by the 76ers, and Rivers would experience more playoff failures, including a loss to the 8th seed in 2021, where his team held leads of 18 points in Game 4 and another lead of 26 points in Game 5. It's obvious at this point that he's not able to win, especially with winning rosters. But this brings me back to the Bucks in the 2024 season. Doc Rivers is clearly a coach that could raise the floor but not the ceiling of a team. A lot of people consider him to be a regular season coach who isn't built for the playoffs, and this isn't far from the truth. For a coach that many have criticized for his ability to adapt and make changes, it made no sense for the Bucks to hire him mid-season to troubleshoot their issues. Once Doc took over the Bucks, it was very clear that by the end of the season, he was not the man for the job. He finished the season with 17 wins and 19 losses. This was a worse record than the previous Adrian Griffin and led many to question why they fired him in the first place. Doc Rivers clearly wasn't the solution. And when it got to the playoffs, they lost in the first round to the Pacers, only winning 2 games. And the excuse that Doc made was that they didn't get a training camp and that he was brought into a broken season. And that brings us to the present day where the excuses don't hold up anymore because he's had a training camp and he's had a fresh start to the season. But with a healthy squad, the Bucks still started off their first 15 games with only 6 wins. It was clear that they had no effective scheme to start off with, which is a recipe to lose in the modern NBA where IQ is everything. They have 2 of the best offensive players in the league in Dame and Giannis, but their team was still in the bottom half of offense at the beginning of the season. The Bucks are currently in the hot seat, with rumors floating around that Giannis was initially disgruntled and the media reported that he may want out. He has put up monster performances, including his 60-point performance, and he is currently leading the league in scoring, averaging 32 points. But with all that effort, the best thing to come out of that is a potential victory in the in-season cup. They are 5th in the Eastern Conference, and although they have improved their record to the above 500 mark, they are still not on track to achieve more than 50+ wins this season. More importantly, there hasn't been enough scrutiny on Doc's ability to coach a more than capable team.
That is ridiculously bad.
Maybe the in-season tournament will bring the identity that they need, but that's never been up to the players. It's been up to your coach to establish that at the beginning of the season, which evidently didn't. Many will look at the players, but when will someone look at their coach? We are nearly 17 years removed from the 2008 championship. Time has moved on, and Doc Rivers is no longer fit for the job. That's 17 years he hasn't proved he can establish a championship culture. But the Bucks have overlooked that, and that might cost them the NBA championship.